All right, good to go.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for coming, everyone, especially Lion here. Thank you so much for joining, man. It's an honor to have you here. And so we have another office hours with AMA in past 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We've been doing presentations from you fellows, and now we are back to the sessions with mentors where we host AMA, where we host these office hours where you can chat with a mentor, with somebody from the core devs, and get to know them, get to learn some technical details of their work, but also know them as a person, learn about their background, and ask them anything. So I hope you prepared some cool questions for dAppLion, because we have a very cool guest today. dAppLion is uh, a great mentor to have here because he's been, so right now, dAppLion works in Lighthouse. Before, he's been leading the development of Lodestar. And generally, he's been contributing to the research around the consensus layer. He's also a DJ, so we have many things. He's definitely one of the best people to talk about the Ethereum consensus layer or Ethereum development in general. Thank you so much for being here, man. It's an honor to have you here. I have Leon right here physically next to me, so it feels weird that I talk to the camera and also to him. But yeah, thanks for joining, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. And before we get to the AMA, before we get to the questions from the audience, I wanted to introduce you a bit, get to know you a little, your background, your journey. So maybe if you can first tell us about yourself, how did you end up working on Ethereum? What brought you to the core development?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, you mute. We're in the same room. It's a bit chaotic. So I started in 2018. I randomly found the people that started dAppNode. I'm not sure if you know that. It's kind of an old project started by Jordi Bailina and Griff Green, two legends. And from there, yeah, it's sucked me in. I did a bunch of contributions to things like Swan City, Aragon, mostly like app layer. And then the beacon chain became a thing on early 2020. And then at the time I joined Lodestar, which is a JavaScript client, consensus client. At the time, the beacon chain hadn't even started, and it took some time for the client to become production ready. But we did that, and then as I got confidence with the specs and everything, I tried to contribute as much as possible to EIPs, research, and other things that have more wide-ranging impact. And as of January this year, I switched to Lighthouse, which is the Rust implementation, also consensus. So yeah, I'll be happy to help. I'm very knowledgeable with consensus, consensus P2P, state transition, future research things. If you have execution questions, I can try to help. Not my expertise, but yeah, whatever, shoot it.
Yeah, awesome. That's where dAppLion comes from the dApp node, right? That's a really cool background. So and now about the present actually. And you changed the team. Big betrayal there came to the Lighthouse. So yeah, what are you working on these days? Can you tell us more about what you are focusing on currently? What sort of work?
Yeah, so late last year, as I was joining Lighthouse, I was contributing on the main features of the Electra hard fork. And so yeah, that's MaxDB mainly, but I think kind of got wrapped up research-wise, so implementation was taken care of by other people. These days, I'm focused, I would say 80% on sampling, specifically pure dust, which is the first step in scalability that hopefully will land in Electra if nothing goes too wrong. Yeah, it's kind of something very new that requires a lot of testing. Yeah, it's kind of new frontier for us, so it's we're hitting more robots than expected. So lots of debugging. Yeah, besides that, just we have a maintenance and just taking care of the clients. Now that we have some time for the fork, because yeah, you want to reduce technical debt before it catches up to you. So that's mostly it.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And yeah, before we jump to the AMA questions, I have at least one more to get some background on you. I'm wondering what were some most challenging things in your developer past when working, whether Lighthouse, Lodestar, or something else in the core development. What you've been working on, something that really challenged you, something that maybe you had to learn from, or yeah, maybe something exciting that you find is highlighted in your past. Yeah, can you share something you've been working on before? Yeah.
Yeah, so Lodestar, one of the main themes that we found through these years is that we are kind of fighting the language. It's if you want to be a highly performant system application written in JavaScript, it's kind of a bit complicated, so you have to do lots of tricks. So finding all those little things that we did was kind of very exciting at the same time, but difficult. And always feel like we have to catch up because the problem with the beacon chain is that the state just keeps increasing like there is no tomorrow. So that means more data, more bandwidth, more states, everything gets more complicated. So you always have to catch up and keep doing optimization just to survive on the network. On Lighthouse, they have quite mature networking layer, but still it's such a complicated piece of technology that any issue that we find debugging it takes so much time. So I spend a lot of time figuring out how can we have like more visibility on what's going on, so that we can find bugs in 1 hour instead of 2 days. And we can do that now, which is exciting. But it took a lot of time to understand all the interactions, and things like Sing has an insane amount of edge cases. Like it looks simple on surface, but there is so much interaction between different things that makes it super complicated. So you need to have kind of a very good knowledge of a lot of different features. Yeah, okay. You have to have a good knowledge of a lot of different pieces of code base to really understand how they fit together. Otherwise, you will not understand these edge cases. So that's kind of very challenging.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's definitely a change of environment coming from TypeScript, where you need to fight with the language itself, to like complexities of Rest, which can be efficient, but comes with another complex problems. Yeah, folks, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. Feel free to prepare a question for Lion. I have few of them, but I want to give you guys space. So we have Katya. Yeah.
Hello, dAppLion. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. My project is about pure DAS, specifically pure DAS metrics. So I wonder how developers and research team go with the results of testing. For example, currently it's like a testing period, and how do you deal with the metrics? How do you deal with the results? Do you use Grafana dashboards or any other analytic tools?
Yeah, so Grafana, and so if you have good metrics, Prometheus and Grafana are all you need. That's it. It's just basically the most important thing is coming up with metrics that are important to whatever you want to debug. And always metrics are a tool to answer questions. So for example, right now, what I'm working on is we are running these devnets for PRDAS locally, and the network just dies after 2 days, and we don't know why. It's just we have no idea. So I'm trying, like right now, I'm trying to figure out what metrics do I have to add to ask the questions I want to answer, which is basically why did it die? So if you don't have enough visibility, then so it's trying to come up. So for example, what we discovered is that the nodes suddenly they ban each other and they disconnect, and that's why the network dies. So from there you want to ask why they did disconnect, when they started to disconnect, So maybe you need metrics like so whenever you disconnect a peer, it's because their score goes down. So you have these events of down scoring. You want to have metrics for those. And then for each one of those, imagine that they are sending bad data. So you want to ask, why did they send the bad data? And you can have metrics for that. So it's kind of thinking about what type of questions you want to answer and then creating metrics for them, and then having some dashboard that you can consume the metrics in an efficient way to just debug quickly.
Yeah, the one reason I found recently is the data disk overflow. Like, yeah, it fills up after 2 days, and at least my kurtosis is falling down.
Okay, thank you so much. It was a great question. When the next one is George.
Hi, Lang. Thank you very much for joining us today. So the first question I want to ask is, because I read quite a lot of articles written by you, and you care about the solo trader, solo staker quite a lot, and together with you and others. So I think you also care about the economics in terms of the healthy of the network, not only about the scalability. So my question is, with the given trend of raising for example, risk-taking protocols, some of the centralization of the risk could happen, and how we're going to prevent. I want to take some opinion from you. Anything you are working on, or how you thought about this kind of centralization risk. So that's question one. Another one, Maria, if you don't mind, I ask a general question. Yeah.
I don't have good memory, so let me answer question one and then you ask question two.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So if I understand what you are asking is, risk taking is a risk, a centralization risk to the set, because it can give an economic incentive, an economic advantage to either entities that are concentrated or entities that have good connections, such as Coinbase or Lyra, etc. And that is true. I think the end game for that's a very controversial topic, is targeting. So it's a combination of MEV burn and issuance targeting. That way so the protocol can capture these anomalies like risk taking and absorb them. So you don't have this variance between solo takers and concentrated actors. That hopefully should be enough. But it would mean that the role of producing blocks, which is what has the most variance, would be abstract away from the current set of validators who will only attest. But that's what's really important for decentralization. But yeah, to get there, it will take some time, because we need to figure out MEV burn, which has as the dependency some form of EPVS, and we need to have exclusion lists to remain sensor resistant. Yeah, and what's a bit scary is if there is a risk-taking protocol that takes into account attesters or something, then that's going to be a bit complicated to absorb into the protocol. But it's a bit far-fetched. Like, I think there is a lot of hype with Engelayer that still have to be proven to be. Because I think as of now, there is absolutely no yield that you can get from it. So we'll see. Hopefully we have enough time to figure that out. So that's basically one side. The other side is an EIP I have been working on with Tony, which is 7716. And that one will give a slight economic edge to solo takers. The way it's going to work is it will alter the way that inactivity penalties are calculated. So if you are a concentrated actor and have a bunch of servers that go up and down at the same time, because you have all of them in Amazon or all of them in the same data center or something, then you get penalized more. So on average, if you are an independent actor, you would make more attester revenue thanks to that. You're not going to be like making double or triple, but it's maybe like 10% or 20%. So, and that can help even out a bit more the economics and make like source takers more sustainable.
Yeah, so thank you. The reason I'm asking this is because I'm working on MaxiB, and we just speak in Discord a few hours ago. So that's related to the second question, because the keywords I remember from that conversation is to go deeper. So in your experience by working on E3, is any kind of challenging time you've been facing, and how you overcome the challenge or the difficulty in your study or in your work here with E3? Yeah.
So sorry, are you asking about like the same question about the centralization pressure of MaxiB?
No.
Specifically about.
No. It's about a general question to share some kind of learning experience, how you go through some of the challenges you are working on, and then you find out the solutions, how you overcome those kind of difficult period. Yeah, or how to go through the to resolve the learning curve from your side. Yeah.
Okay, got it. I guess for MaxTV, I have a special case because I designed it together with Francesco and Mikael, so they did most of it, and they are really smart.
Okay.
So if basically it was me, well, actually Mike started MaxTV, credit to him. Then Mikael joined, then I joined, and then Francesco joined. But basically, the three of them, they are really smart and have really good ideas. So whenever we had some problem, we just posted it on the chat and someone came up with a solution within a few days. And if someone didn't understand, they would just take time to explain. So I would say people is the best way to unlock you in that situation. So if you want to learn about MaxTV and you get stuck, just either ask me or just find someone else that wants to learn MaxTV with you, and you guys can like talk it out and try to figure out. But at least that would be my cheat code.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. That was great. We have Dan. Yeah.
Hey, Lion. So still in the context of somehow of the before my fellow before, my project it's about adding delegations in protocol, which is not trivial. You reviewed Potuzzi's PR of delegating validators back in 2021, but that was actually just transferring excess balance to another validator. But you were, from what I saw in the PR, you were involved in the review of that PR. Do you have, in general and in the context of staking and Rainbow staking framework and now Orbit SSF, all these new research papers that basically come and shape the future of what's coming? Do you have an opinion of how or if we should add ETH delegations in protocol? I mean, I started with Rainbow staking framework, but now it's a bit put aside for other means to rotate or to select or to diminish the validator set selection, including using MaxiB and consolidation incentives and stuff like that. So in this context, I know high level we cannot enter in detail now, but I'm very curious of your input.
Yeah, I think so. About delegation, we should be pragmatic and accept the fact that delegation exists today in Ethereum through entities like Lido, and it's just a terrible delegation. It's absolutely terrible.
Yep.
So accepting that reality.
It's off protocol.
Yeah, well, and it not only is off protocol, but the security factor that you get is absolutely disgusting. Like the people running nodes have very little at stake compared to the amount of value that they are handling. And yeah, it has all these negative externalities. It's pretty bad. So acknowledging this reality, then we may want to consider what can we do. Like from the start, there has not been any delegation mechanism. First, for simplicity, and second, because we didn't want to kind of enshrine a specific way of doing delegation. And
may I ask why? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've heard this position before, and I've asked around, and I didn't find an answer. Why did research at beginning didn't want to? Okay, simplicity, I understand. We aim for simplicity, but what was the reason? If you can tell me one reason why there was no wish for enshrining.
I mean, there was a wish, but the problem is that there was no design. It's kind of now with EPBS. Everyone wants to get rid of MVP boost, but there is no design right now that everyone feels really sure about. So enshrining something that's not long-term sustainable is even more costlier than not doing anything. So
right.
You have to consider at the beginning, the most important thing we had to do is do the merge. That's the most important. That has an insane amount of benefit, and we have to do it since so many years. We had a design. So delaying the merge to wait for delegation, I think, would be a mistake. So that's why it was not made. If there had been a solid design that was future-proof and secure and blah 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 and everything, then it would have been considered. But that never showed up.
Right. And second question, if possible, a bit technical. You mentioned the growth of state, the continuous growth of state. Do you see something like stable container serialization, something that we need to get to? Because inevitable, even with our projects, we get to the point where we have to add new lines in the containers, or we need to modify existing containers, add containers, and that gets to growth of stable container. Any thoughts? Is it something that we're going to have?
Yeah, so just to clarify, a stable container addresses an important issue, but it's different from growing the state. So when I talk about growing the state, I mean in terms of size, in terms of byte size. So that means that clients need to have more disk space, more RAM, more bandwidth. What stable containers address is the list of fields actually growing, and that breaks the merkleization of the state. So if you want to make proofs, your code breaks. So for staking pools or any sort of on-chain protocol that wants to prove that data belongs to some root, they need to have governance or something. And with stable container, they could just hard code it and forget about it forever, which is a nice property. So yes, we should do stable container. The question as always is when, because the next hard fork is also very full, has a lot of things. So it will either come this fork or the next one. But yes, we will do it. I think we should do it.
Probably Osaka. Thank you.
Yeah, very well. We have another question from Katya.
Yeah, it's about PureDAS again. So sorry. So now we have I can see my blob transaction in the Explorer. I can see all the data and what will happen after PureDAS updates. So could I see my transaction data in the Explorer, for example, or only commitment, how it will work? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good point. So after PureDAS, the main feature is that we will have sharding. So if you want to, you will not have all the data. That means that you will not be able to retrieve block transactions if your node has some sharding coefficient greater than 1. You would need to either run what we call a super node, which has all the data, or you would have to go to third-party providers like blob explorers or something like that to retrieve your transaction. So yeah, I think we haven't figured that out yet, but maybe if you have some sharding, then the node will be like 404, we don't have the data, sorry.
Yeah, so yeah, for example, Etherscan, it will just run Supernode and have all the data, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Basically, the expectation is that all explorers, applications that need high degree of security, like exchanges, high level applications running, I don't know, high value things, rollups. Basically, anyone that has a lot of stake in the network should run a supernode out of selfishness, because that would give them the 100% assurance that that block is correct, so they can act on it.
Yeah, that
It will
makes
be
sense.
more for, yeah, it will be more for like stakers or people that want to run nodes at home, that they don't have to have all the data if they don't want to.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I can't wait to run my super archive node. Yeah, thank you guys. We have a question from Hanglang.
Yeah, hi. So I'm currently working on improvements gradient implementation in PDAS implementation in gradient. But like you said in like you mentioned in the previous question, like there are a lot of problem with the networking, including like a syncing problem. So my question is, would like to not asking about that because you have been mentioned this already. So my question is regarding on your proposal on the last HD core on the background blocks uh, by rank version 3. So could you explain more about that and how it is different from the previous version? Yeah, thank you.
Okay, just to give more context, what Hangland is referring to is a proposal to add a new RPC on the consensus P2P. So when on the classic spec, when you want to sync, you issue a request that's called blocks by range, and you tell your peer, hey, give me blocks between slot 1000 and 1010. And that the other peer will just retrieve these blocks from the database and give them to you. Because you are requesting only by slot, you can only request blocks that are canonical. So what happened in Lighthouse, I was working on sync and making it more resilient to unstable network situations. And some case that we don't handle now is if you have a long fork, so imagine you have some old block that's finalized and then one fork with 1,000 blocks. And then there is a second fork that has also 1,000 blocks. And you want to sync this fork, you cannot do that with this method. You need to find a peer that has that chain as canonical and then request it from it, because otherwise the current RPC doesn't have enough expressivity to ask for that chain. And also, you don't know if the peer is going to be switching, because it could do that. It could have a reorg and switch from one network from one chain to the other, and then you are requesting something and you get something completely different. And then you could be like, hey, why are you giving me garbage blocks? You expect these blocks, and then he gives you these blocks, and then you don't score each other. It's just a mess. So what these new RPC does is you ask for a range of slots, but also you ask from which fork you want them. That way you have the assurance that the peer understands what you want, and you can downscore it if it gives you garbage. And it also allows you to sync this side fork from everyone, basically. Thank you. So yeah, that's the motivation. I think that's all.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, folks, feel free to get your hands up. I have one more question about PeerDAS actually. One drama I wanted to touch on. Maybe you saw the tweets by Peter recently, accusing the CL or the researchers in general of destroying home stakers, etc. So the thing is that with PeerDAS, we are able to parse more blob data, but we still have the limitation of the EL, which needs to like handle big blocks. So how do we solve this? Like, is this, can you shed more light into like Peter's words, like whether this is true, whether there are some other limitations?
I don't think I'm familiar with the word.
You haven't seen the tweet by Peter, you don't know what I mean.
Okay, then we are gonna play telephone, so I don't know what he said, but I can just bring up other criticisms that people have said and not tie to Peter specifically. So one issue that is true is when we are sharding, you don't have to download all the data to a test. So as a staker, you have mainly two roles. You basically vote on what's canonical, that's a testing, but you also have to propose blocks. Sharding affects only attesting, but it doesn't affect proposing, because the one that proposes have to create all the data and send it. And that's an issue because you need to have a lot of bandwidth to upload all the data. Otherwise, your block will not become canonical. And that's true. That's an issue. But we have a solution. And you can, so actually today, what some builders are doing, like Flashbots, is they just refuse to include any block transactions whatsoever, which is kind of stupid because they should be able to do it if they are serving big players, but they are kind of greedy and just decide because it's not worth it. Block transactions don't pay enough and just ignore them completely. So solo stakers could do that if they want to. Like if this becomes a problem, they could just ignore block transactions altogether. And a better solution is when you include a block transaction and compute all the data, what likely happens is that that block transaction is already on everyone's mempool. So what you can do is tell the EL to have some special block production rules where you will only include in a block transaction that has a high confidence that it has already been propagated in the whole network. So for example, wait for a few seconds that you have seen a transaction to consider for inclusion. What that would mean is everyone else now, instead of waiting for you to upload the data, they will just go to the mempool, retrieve the block transactions, and recompute the data columns that you need for PRLAS. And there could be even altruistic nodes that they do that always, and they just broadcast the data columns to everyone. So you as a solo staker, you only have to decide which block transactions to include, but you don't have to propagate the data. You just tell the network, hey, this is my selection, and then someone else will calculate the columns for you and upload them to the network. So Lighthouse is already implementing this for the net. So there is no this recompetition, but at least you can consider blocks for a head faster. But we could totally do that for PRLAS. And I think I don't see why it shouldn't work.
Interesting. So there are other trade-offs that solar stakers can do. Yeah, thank you so much, Lion. Yeah, sorry you couldn't hear me there. Guys, do we have any more questions for Lion? Can you raise your hands? Yeah, we have Chirag. Go ahead.
I have a particular technical doubt in what you just explained about like other nodes just using the blob sidecars that they have in their mempool already. Like in light of like 1D does, wouldn't encoding have to be done and KCG proofs have to be calculated by like a single entity and then distributed with like like you have to calculate for each cell and then distribute seed that through the entire network, right? So it becomes kind of like the computation itself becomes kind of centralized, where the proposer has to do that or the builder has to do that to seed the entire network with the cells.
Okay, if I understood the question, you are asking, I'm not sure if it's a problem of who will do it or if it's an altruistic problem of who will actually do the, like spend CPU time calculating the KCG proofs and the polynomial extensions. Is that correct?
Yes, like because so my it's not a so it's a doubt per se where like when that has to be done by a single person, you cannot anymore use the sidecars from your mempool directly, right? Because they have to be encoded and someone has to commit to the encodings, right? Or am I mistaken?
So anyone can compute the encoding as long as you choose the right block transactions. So if you get a block and the block says that I'm using this blob transaction and this other blob transaction, anyone can compute the extensions and anyone can compute the proofs, and they will always be the same. So if you use a builder and you commit to a specific header, the builder can compute the extensions and the proofs for you. And similarly, with the trick I explained now, if you have the blob sidecars from the execution client on your local machine, and you know which transactions are the right ones that go into the block, you can also, basically anyone can compute like the data column sidecars or the blob sidecars.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, that answers my question.
Yeah.
And wait, someone asked on the chat about, she said, solo stakers can't ignore blob anymore if ELs end up being valid for n+1 include transactions. That is true. But I think so far the EL design does not include blob transactions, which is kind of annoying, but that's what it is. But it's important to understand that Ethereum wants to move to a future where producing blocks would be really, really expensive. So that's why in order to realize full dank sharding potential with 32 megabyte block, we have to have some form of EPBS. So that's kind of the end game anyway.
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
Just wondering, because you also mentioned that there's no design that for EPBS that has, you know, like a big, like a large consensus around it. You know, Potus has this PR open 7723 or 32. How do you see that design, especially intersecting with current EL inclusion list design and going towards sharding? Are we going to be, you know, to have to renounce the builder role altogether and just do APS? I mean, just, you know, auction the right and don't actually involve builders anymore. I don't know. Okay, it's maybe a not very well formulated question, but I hope you understand where I'm going.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't catch up with the EAP specifics. I was familiar with the design as of 5 months ago, but not
Okay.
now. So I'm not sure if something has changed. If it's the same that was before, I have some
it just
concerns on the implementation.
it just leaves relays aside, yeah. But they're still builders. Only their stakes. They are staked, but they are still.
And it's also hard. Like you cannot. It's very hard to do a design that completely eliminates relays. Because someone, if there are enough incentives, someone can do some off-protocol solution. That will always be possible.
Okay, there will be the obviously you can choose to use relays even with the current EPBS, but there is an option to not use relays and have this in-protocol exchange of payload.
So as far as I understand, EPBS allows to do a trust exchange between a proposer and a builder through the protocol, but you could always do that off protocol. I think it's going to be really hard to design a system that makes that unfeasible, or at least it will always be feasible, but maybe we could make it not as much economically viable, so that most of the block production flow happens through the path that we want.
Right. Oh, okay. So and that will go well with sharding. I mean, with the fundamentals.
I would say so. I think it's orthogonal.
Okay. I think we'll have to rewatch the recording of this session just to take some info. Okay.
So an example would be EIP1559.
Yeah.
And then Flashbots came along and they did all of these private mempool where you could submit transactions with zero gas. So with EIP1559, we were forcing everyone to at least burn that fee. So that would be an example of a protocol mechanism that defeats a specific usage of these of protocol channels.
Mevborn?
Yeah, Mevborn would be a way to capture this revenue and make the off channel not as much competitive. But it's still going to be complicated. Like MEV is a bit of a pain in the ass because the block rewards are so unstable that are harder to capture than transaction fees.
Okay, thank you for the exploration.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, guys. Yeah, Katya again.
Yeah, do we have time for questions? Yeah. My question is, when working specifically on some part of the protocol, do you need to follow all the other parts? For example, you're working on the PeerDAS. Do you need to follow all other updates like BBS, etc.? How deep do you need to understand it? Yeah.
No, there is absolutely no need to follow all the things. I think we thrive as a human species with specialization. If everyone had to do everything and know everything, we wouldn't be very inefficient. Like, so there is value in specializing. You can, I don't know how many hours you have in a day, but I am not able to keep up with everything. And I used to try to do that, or at least choose maybe 2 or 3 areas that are interesting to you and just keep up. If you can provide value to them, then it makes sense. But otherwise, you should be wary because if you try to do everything, maybe you end up doing nothing. So like an example would be EPVS. I used to follow that very closely, but at some point, the other areas required more time, so I had to let it go. And now I'm not up to date. But if in the future, I don't know, I see I can contribute, then I would try to catch up. But maybe I will have to drop something else.
That sounds good because, yeah, when you see all the specs, it's a bit scary. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the specialization is very important in such a complex system as Ethereum. So that's why we encourage you guys to choose a project, focus on one thing during the cohort. Do we have any more questions? Anyone? Many people haven't asked anything, and you can also type in the chat if you cannot talk for some reason. So yeah, let me ask a question. Then yeah, what is your most controversial take in Ethereum? Do you have anything that researchers or devs would find controversial? Something that's maybe recently discussed or overall any controversial takes for us?
You want to mute? Yeah. So something that's kind of a hard pill to swallow is that the solo staker will only trend downwards from here, in my opinion, unless something fundamental changes in Ethereum. The economics of scale are just too weak. So with the new issuance debate, what people get really angry about is that we want to make a change that will diminish the economics of solo staking. But the point that we want to bring up is that the no action, so what we have today, will also do the same, but even worse. And solo staking has always had this, I don't know, like altruistic premium, which people don't like that, but it's true. Like most of the people that run nodes at home, they have strong beliefs that matter, and that makes them make these decisions that are not perfectly economically rational. It's the same way. We fight for the things we want. We sometimes take actions that are not perfectly economically rational because we believe in something or we want to do something good. So I think that most of the most of the solo stakers have already been onboarded, and we will have more people that have the same characteristics of this like altruistic profile that makes them do this decision. And because they have this premium, if we alter the economics a little bit, they will still be here. So that's why I'm contributing to EIP 7716 to make them more economically viable, so that we kind of offset the changes that we have to do in the future. But yeah, if you just want money, you just put your money on a stake on an exchange and just stake. That's just cheaper for you. It's true that there is like tail risks. You can get screwed, and if you solo stake, you have full sovereignty of your money and your decisions. But that's very hard to quantify, and I don't think the average Joe considers that as a thing. And no one knows how to put a number, so it's hard to put it on the bucket of economical rational decision. But yeah, I don't know. Like people, when I say these altruistic factors, people are like, oh, that's what it is, and it's a beautiful thing. I don't know. I love it.
Yeah, thanks, Lion. We have a question in the comments. How do you guys prevent any attacks and do such a robust testing on new features that Ethereum is not being hacked till date? Well, it's been hacked for a bit there. Just the contracts, though. Yeah, we have a whole thing on testing with Mario and Pari, and we had a bunch of sessions on that. But do you have something you would like to say about testing the robustness? Like before the merge, the testing ramped up so much, and I don't know if you have anything to share there.
I mean, it has been hacked. Yes, there was an incident some time ago. I think someone from Truffle or like some team sent a transaction that split the network, like created a consensus bug. That was really serious, but thankfully it affected a minority client.
That was that was the Nethermind when Nethermind forked off in 2021, or I think it was after London, right? Yeah, this one. It was Optimism, not Truffle. It was the optimistic guys who split the network.
Also, in the Beacon chain, we have had there was an open bug on the for choice that was really serious. You could reorg 1/3 of every epoch continuously and just mess with the network really bad. But thankfully, no one found it before us, so we kind of silently patched it for a few months. We were just lucky that no one exploited. So how do we prevent any attacks? We cannot prevent all the attacks, but as Mario was saying, we do everything. So we have manual testing, lots of people reviewing all the code in every client. All the clients have a lot of very experienced people, and they are able to catch these bugs. We have a lot of smart people looking at the specs, doing spec tests. We have a lot of fuzzing, both for like the specs. There is this really interesting project called Fossil for the for choice to basically vast and create this, I don't know, 1 billion test cases, which is crazy. We also fuzz the networking layer, the serialization protocols. We have differential fuzzing. Also on the EVM, also fuzzing, which has got a lot of bugs. The what's the name for the when we have this project that we pay money if we find a bug? The bug bounties. We have really good bug bounties with I think up to 1 million per bug, which is nice. So yeah, just try to have as much coverage as possible. Test, and if something happens, hopefully fix it before someone exploits.
Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah, it's always good to talk about testing. Josh, you have a question?
Yeah, so I have seen some recent conversation happening around Ethereum research happening in the public in a way that's challenging for a lot of people to understand, especially if you don't have a lot of the in speak or the sort of like all the acronyms and all the different like little kinds of ways that researchers are talking to one another. And so I'm curious, like, how do you feel that like the working in open ethos affects the public perception of Ethereum?
I think I have to get. I'm sorry.
So working on the open, personally, I love it. I think it's awesome. It's also very convenient because if you forget your laptop, you can join the meeting from your friend's laptop and you don't need any credentials or anything. It's kind of very convenient. and there is always a YouTube video, people talking about it. Like, to be honest, for most of the calls, I do not attend unless I have to. And then I watch like Christine's summary or someone else's summary. If they talk about something that is of interest, then I watch the replay. So it's convenient. And you have to understand that things will be complicated, and that's one of the beauties of open source. Not everyone has to understand it, but as long as someone that you trust can understand it, then we are more secure. So imagine that Signal is open source, and they try to publish an update that's malicious. You will probably not know about it, but there is some Swiss organization that cares about freedom of the press, and they look over what Signal is doing. They will find that out, then raise the alarm. Then there will be a public uproar, and probably this thing would be rollback. So that's kind of the same. I don't think we don't need everyone to understand it, but we just need enough people to understand it to have us accountable to what we do.
I agree with that, but what I guess I'm kind of asking is that, like there's a lot of conceptual stuff that gets discussed on like crypto Twitter or on Warpcast or, these sorts of things that are very, very new concepts that somebody who maybe just dabbles a little bit in blockchain stuff or, is a degen and aping into a bunch of weird shit, like sees, some of this conversation that might be just very, very idealistic or, just in a very fledgling phase and might take that information and say this is what Ethereum is doing because one guy said it on crypto Twitter or whatever. So the open source part of it, I agree, is a great thing. I'm curious more about sort of the research stuff that isn't necessarily stuff that has been agreed upon going into the protocol or is still sort of trying to be worked out conceptually, like what sorts of effects that might have on the public perception of the actual whole community and ecosystem.